Welcome to the Metrics That Matter podcast, hosted by Adeeb Valiulla. Today, we're diving deep into how top engineering teams are using data, specifically something called Software Engineering Insights, or SEI, to make a real impact on their business.
Yeah, it's a really interesting space right now. Most engineering organizations, they're swimming in data. Just think about everything their dev processes generate. But often it's kind of stuck in different tools, different silos, makes it really hard to see the big picture, or even figure out what it all means.
Exactly, like you've got data in Jira or maybe Azure DevOps about project stuff, then code activity in GitHub or Bitbucket, deployment details maybe in Jenkins or Harness CI.
Right. Each tells a little piece of the story.
And SEI, well, it's about connecting those dots, isn't it? Giving you a much richer, more, contextual understanding. It's definitely more than just dashboards.
It is. It aims for those informed, role-specific insights, really tying the engineering work back to actual business results.
So it's about the story behind the numbers.
Precisely. And our goal today, well, it's to unpack a proven framework, a way to set up an engineering metrics program that, doesn't just sit there, something that actually drives real improvement in how you build and deliver software.
Okay, let's get into it. So where do we start? It sounds like the absolute first step, even before looking at metrics, is knowing your purpose.
Absolutely fundamental. What are you actually trying to achieve? It's kind of like setting up a CI/CD pipeline, right?
Yeah.
You need a goal. You need to know what you're deploying and, importantly, why. Without that clear objective, you just end up, well, data rich, but insight poor.
Makes sense. So what are some common objectives that push teams towards needing SEI?
We see a few key themes pretty consistently. First, efficiency. Teams want to speed things up, right? Get software delivered faster, shorten those cycle times.
Yeah, getting value to users faster, always a good goal. What else?
Then there's productivity, not just output, but, boosting developer engagement, keeping the team humming along consistently. Happy, productive engineers, they drive innovation.
True. Engaged teams make a huge difference.
And the third big one is alignment, making sure the engineering effort, all that work, actually supports the strategic priorities of the business. Are we building new features, or are we mostly just keeping the lights on? KTLO, as they say.
TTLO, keeping the lights on. Yeah, that balance is crucial. So these are the big questions guiding the metrics.
Exactly. And maybe a good point for reflection for you listening is, what are, say, the top 3 decisions you wish you could make with solid data right now, but you feel like you can't?
Good question. Okay, so once you've got that purpose clear,
Yeah.
then you start thinking about metrics.
Then you choose the right metrics, yeah. And look, it's tempting to track everything, but honestly, we usually recommend starting focused, maybe around 5 core metrics that really tie back to those objectives you just defined.
5 sounds manageable. Okay, so what are some of those foundational metrics people should look at?
Well, the door metrics are a fantastic starting point. They give you a solid baseline for delivery performance.
Right, doors to door. That's lead time for change failure rate, deployment frequency, and MTTR, mean time to recovery.
Exactly. They give you that high-level view of speed and stability. High lead time might signal bottlenecks. High change failure rate could be quality issues creeping in.
Okay, door is a strong base. What else is critical?
Pull request cycle time, that's a big one for workflow health. It tracks the time from when a PR is opened until it actually gets merged.
If that's slow.
It often points to slowdowns, maybe in the review process, or just general friction in the workflow that's hindering development speed.
Yeah.
You can even break it down further, look at time waiting for review versus actual review time, that sort of thing.
Got it. Pinpointing the bottleneck within the PR process.
Yeah.
What about sprint execution?
Yeah, for that, commit to done ratio and scope creep are really insightful. Commit to done tells you how well teams are hitting their sprint commitments, helps spot issues with planning or estimating maybe.
And scope creep.
That tracks, how much work gets added after the sprint starts. Too much can really mess with predictability and focus.
Right, keeping sprints reliable. And going back to that alignment piece, KTLO versus new stuff.
That's where effort allocation, or sometimes called business alignment, comes in. It basically shows you how time is being split. Percentage on KTLO bug fixes, maintenance, security versus effort on innovation, new features that drive growth.
And the right balance there depends, I guess.
It totally depends. Mature product might need more KTLO. A startup, probably pushing harder on innovation. SEI helps you visualize your balance.
Okay, that's super useful for strategic planning. You mentioned a couple more.
Yeah, Trellis Score and Coding Days. They can give you a sense of team and individual developer engagement patterns. Trellis often looks at things like code contribution frequency, review participation, knowledge sharing. It's a kind of a holistic view.
And coding days.
Usually that's just the number of days a developer actively commits code. If that number is consistently low across a team, well, it might be worth digging into why. Are there blockers? Disengagement.
So these metrics together, they tell a story.
Exactly. They paint that picture of engineering health and productivity. And SEI tools often come with pre-built dashboards to help you see that narrative right away.
Okay, so we've got objectives, we've picked some core metrics, but just piping in that raw data isn't the magic bullet, is it? Which brings us to step 3, configuring SEI properly.
Precisely. Raw data is just raw data. Context is everything if you want real, actionable intelligence. Good SEI platforms allow for really deep configuration across your tools, your people, your workflows. It's about making the insights accurate and truly relevant to your organization.
So first things first, connecting the right systems.
Absolutely. You need your core tools integrated. Issue tracking Jira, ADO, source code management, GitHub, Bitbucket, CI/CD Jenkins, Harness CI, things like that.
And critically, making sure that data feed is reliable.
Yes. You absolutely have to validate the ingestion, monitor for sync failures. You need to trust the data foundation.
Okay, connect the tools, ensure data quality. What's next in configuration?
Setting up contributor attributes. This is powerful. It means linking developer identities across all those systems, the same person in Jira, GitHub, etc., and then tagging them.
Tagging them with what?
With useful metadata, like their role, their team, location, maybe their manager, employee type, full-time contractor.
Ah, I see. So you can slice and dice the data.
Exactly. It enables much smarter filtering, lets you benchmark different groups, maybe team A versus team B or different locations. And it even helps with targeted coaching for specific teams.
That makes a lot of sense. How about organizing the data itself within the SEI tool?
That's where collections come in. You can usually create asset-based collections, think repositories, microservices, great for tracking door or sprint metrics at that granular service level.
Okay, focused on the what?
And then you have people-based collections, organized around teams, departments, maybe even geographical regions. These are better for looking at things like dev insights, the Trellis score, or that overall business alignment picture for a whole department.
Different views for different questions. You mentioned profiles and widgets, too.
Yeah, flexibility is key. SEI lets you define custom profiles for metrics. So your definition of lead time or MTTR might be specific to your process. You can tailor it.
So you're not stuck with a generic definition.
Right. And configurable widgets let you control how these insights show up. You want them to fit into your team's existing workflow, showing the most relevant stuff easily. The goal is making the data work for you, not making you change everything for the data.
Right. Tailoring the data delivery, which logically leads to step 4. Aligning these metrics to different roles and personas. Because a CTO cares about different things than, say, a Scrum Master, right?
Totally. If you just throw one massive dashboard at everyone, you get dashboard fatigue. Nobody looks at it. The trick is tailoring the view, the metrics, the presentation, to what each specific role actually needs to know and act upon.
Okay, walk me through some examples. What does persona-based reporting look like?
Sure. Let's take a CTO or a VP of engineering. They're usually focused on the big picture, the strategy, so they'd likely want a quarterly review.
Looking at what?
Key things like the overall Delora metrics. How's our delivery capability? Effort allocation. Where are we investing our time? And maybe that innovation percentage are we building for the future?
High-level strategic view. Makes sense. What about a director of engineering, closer to the teams?
Right. A director might look monthly. They'd be interested in sprint trends over time, maybe PR cycle time across their teams to spot wider bottlenecks, and MTTR for system resilience.
Okay. And an engineering manager, day-to-day team lead.
They'd probably look weekly. Things like coding days, is my team active? PR approval rate, are reviews happening smoothly within the team? Maybe rework metrics, are we seeing quality issues causing wasted effort?
Different granularity, different frequency, got it. What about, say, Scrum Masters or product managers?
A Scrum Master or maybe a TPM, they're focused on the sprint, the team dynamics. So weekly, maybe even daily checks on commit to done, scope creep, general sprint hygiene.
Keeping the current sprint on track.
Exactly. And a product manager, they'd likely want a maybe bi-weekly view of feature delivery lead time. How long does it take to get my feature out? And definitely that KTLO versus new work balance, because they own the new stuff.
Right information, right person, right time.
Yeah.
Okay. But just having these tailored dashboards, that's not the end goal either, is it? You need a rhythm. Step 5, build a rhythm of review and ownership.
Absolutely critical. Deploying dashboards and walking away doesn't work. High-performing teams build regular cadences, times where they actually sit down, look at the insights, talk about them, and decide what to do.
What do those cadences look like in practice?
Well, you often see weekly ops syncs. Teams look at recent PR trends, coding days, scope creep from the last sprint, quick tactical reviews.
Okay, short-term focus.
Then maybe monthly product and engineering syncs. The focus shifts a bit broader. Business alignment, new work percentage, maybe medium-term trends.
Or strategic alignment checks?
And then quarterly, often as part of QBRs, quarterly business reviews, that's where you revisit the big OKRs, refine metrics based on what you've learned, and look at the longer-term trend improvement.
Weekly, monthly, quarterly. Makes sense. But someone needs to be responsible for driving action from these reviews, right?
Yes, ownership is key. For every dashboard and every collection of metrics, someone needs to be the designated owner. Their job isn't just to look at the numbers, it's to interpret them, flag concerns or opportunities, and actually drive the follow-up actions. Without that clear ownership, insights just stay insights. They don't become improvements.
Accountability. Got it. Okay, so we've got a solid foundation. Objectives, metrics, configuration, roles, review, rhythm. How do we then scale this? Take it beyond the initial teams. Step 6, scale with persona-based metrics.
Right. Once you've got some wins, seen some positive results, you start deepening the usage. One way is creating even more specific role-based dashboards, catering to niche needs within the org.
Fine-tuning the insights further.
You can also leverage tools like the Trellis score more strategically, use it for targeted coaching, helping individual engineers grow, maybe even identifying high performers or future leaders.
Interesting, using it for talent development. Any other scaling avenues?
Integrating with HR systems can add a really rich layer of context. Think about adding data like employee tenure, team geography, maybe even team churn rates alongside your engineering metric.
Why would you do that?
It helps you understand the human factors. Maybe high churn on a team correlates with declining metrics, or maybe new hires need more ramp-up time. It helps you see the connections. When you start weaving all this together, SEI really moves beyond just reporting. It becomes more like an engineering operating system.
An engineering operating system. I like that. It informs decisions across the board. Okay, so we're understanding, we're improving, we're scaling. But ultimately, we need direction, right? Goals. Step 7. Set strategic, measurable engineering OKRs.
Precisely. Data needs direction. Insights need goals. You use SEI to define ambitious but achievable objectives and key results OKRs that tie directly back to business outcomes.
Can you give some concrete examples? How does SEI translate into OKRs?
Sure. Let's say velocity is key. Your objective might be improve software delivery velocity. A key result, informed by SEI, could be reduce average pull request cycle time by 25%.
Measurable. Okay.
Or maybe engagement is the focus. Objective, enhance developer productivity. Key result, increase average coding days per developer to 3.5 plus per week.
Directly trackable with SEI.
Exactly. Or for alignment. Objective, increase focus on strategic initiatives. Key result, increase innovation work to 60% of total effort. For stability. Objective, enhance release stability. Key result, decrease change failure rate, CFR, to under 10%.
Very specific, measurable goals tied to the metrics we've been discussing. And the beauty is, SEI lets you track progress against these OKRs pretty much in real time.
That's the power. It gives you that continuous feedback loop. Are we on track? Do we need to adjust course? It keeps the goals front and center.
Okay, this framework makes a lot of sense. But theory is one thing. Let's talk about real-world impact. You mentioned some examples.
Yeah, seeing how companies actually use this is really illuminating. Let's take a cybersecurity company. Their big challenge: drive innovation faster, but without compromising their super high security and quality standards.
A classic balancing act. How did SEI help?
They focused on dev insights and business alignment. The result: they significantly boosted the effort going into new features over 62%. But at the same time, they cut unapproved PRs by 32%, so better discipline, and sped up their PR cycle time by 36%. Faster, but still secure and high quality.
Wow, achieving both. That's impressive. What about another industry?
Okay, an information technology company. They needed to scale up delivery across distributed teams, but couldn't afford instability. The results with SEI were, frankly, dramatic.
How dramatic.
Average PR cycle time dropped by almost 99%. Deployment frequency went up 30x. Yes, 30 times. And their overall lead time for change went from over 9 months down to less than 3.
That's transformative.
It really was.
Yeah.
SEI gave them that end-to-end visibility they lacked, let them crush bottlenecks, and achieve this continuous flow without breaking things.
Incredible. How about a heavily regulated field like finance? Speed versus risk is huge there.
Right. A financial services firm undergoing a big tech transformation. They used Dora metrics and Sprint Insights heavily. They cut their lead time by 78%. Change failure rate dropped from nearly 40% down to just over 14%. And PR merge time got 98% faster.
So faster and safer releases.
Essentially, yeah. Better visibility helped them manage risk, reallocate resources smartly between legacy stuff and the critical new innovation they needed for their transformation.
It really shows the adaptability. Maybe one more quick example.
Sure, hospitality company, they had hybrid teams, employees, contractors. Goal was better collaboration, faster delivery. Using SEI, they slashed PR approval time, kept coding days high across the board, and crucially, got insights into collaboration patterns between the different groups.
And that led to?
They actually restructured their teams based on the data, realigned review duties, streamlined handoffs, led to faster cycles, and just better team cohesion overall.
These examples really drive home that SEI isn't just about fancy charts. It's about tangible results, business outcomes.
That's the whole point. The best engineering orgs, they don't just track metrics, they operationalize them. They weave them into how they work, build a culture around insight, accountability, and driving impact.
Okay, so if we were to boil it all down, the key takeaways for someone wanting to implement SEI effectively.
It comes down to a few core things. 1, start with why. Clear business objectives first. 2, choose the right metrics, not all the metrics. 3, configure SEI for context and trust the data. 4, tailor insights to roles, make it relevant. 5, build that rhythm of review and clear ownership. 6, use the insights to set strategic, measurable OKRs tied to business value.
Follow those steps, and SEI can really become, as you said, the backbone of an engineering excellence strategy.
Absolutely. It's about turning that flood of data, which can feel overwhelming, into real, actionable intelligence, fueling improvement, boosting teams, and ultimately driving serious business success.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. How could this kind of focused, strategic approach to engineering metrics fundamentally change how your team operates? How could it change your contribution to the bigger business goals? What's maybe the one metric that, if you just had better, clear insight into it right now, could unlock some significant improvements for you? Something to think about. We definitely encourage you to explore these ideas further. And of course, for more deep dives into metrics that matter, keep tuning in to the Metrics That Matter podcast, hosted by Adeeb Valiulla.